side, which unless you go out into space, you never get to see. So I have a joke to tell you before we get started here.
Do you want me to show the front side, the back side?
Yeah, why don't you show the front and the back side while I'm doing this? Can we do that? Okay. I was chatting with my son, Matt, the other day on the phone, telling him about our Zoom STAR program. Now, he knows very little about astronomy, and he's not really that interested. So I thought I would toss him the question that I asked Jordan to research last time, which was, why are all the craters on the backside of the moon have Russian names, pretty much? And Matt, being kind of funny and quick, without really knowing anything, tossed off the following answer. Well, he said, I guess it's because the Russians live on the backside of the earth so they can see the backside of the moon. I think you have to know something about astronomy to realize how funny that is. So here we have our pictures.
Yep.
Jordan, we'll get to your real answer in a bit. Okay, the one on the left is what we usually see with the dark and the light parts. Strangely enough, and maybe if somebody really gets curious, I don't ever remember reading anything about it, but the side, the back side, the far side, the side the Russians first saw is very different looking. Now, you know me, what's the big question? Why? I don't know why. So maybe somebody will want to research that, and in 2 weeks, they can let us know why. So we'll leave that one a mystery for now. I want to show some pictures before we get started. How do we do this, Melanie?
Oh, let me stop sharing my screen here.
Okay. I'm going to hold up to the screen and then.
Yep.
Okay, how do I do this?
So this is you, so you can see what you're sharing.
Okay, wait a minute. Alrighty.
Yep.
All right, this is not the best, but you can all find it online. This is that famous photo that some American astronomer standing on the moon looked up towards the earth in the sky and took this picture. And I don't know about you, it sort of gives me goosebumps. But even more so, I forget which mission this was. Can we get the whole thing in? All right. Yep. This was taken by one of our spacecrafts with its camera further out, and we see the small moon in front of the larger Earth, and way off in the distance, our sun. That makes me the hair stand even more on end. If you ever thought you were lonely, hang this one on your wall. We really are out there, probably at least like us, by ourselves. Alrighty, and another one. This is not the best, but you can look these all up. No, this is going to be really hard. Okay, and can you shift it? You guys can look this up online. It's the footprints left behind. I forget who, Bud Aldrin or the other fellow that landed on the moon with him the first time around, and they walked around in this 6 inches of moon dust. And we'll talk in a bit, but those footprints will probably last for millions and millions and millions of years. I think I'll leave the other one. It's too hard to see. Okay, it's time, guys, for questions. And let's see. Once again, I did not write down, except for one or two, do I remember, who I asked. So, who had the age of the moon? Who's that?
I did.
Who's I?
Say Brock.
Brock, okay. How old is the moon?
4.53 billion years old.
All righty. And I'm a great one for rounding things off. So I say 4.5 billion years, right?
Yeah.
Years? Okay. Which means the moon, there he is almost as old as the Earth. All righty. Rima is hanging out in the other part of the library. She had to find out how far away the moon is, and that's how we got into the discussion about racehorses. Rima, how far away is the moon? Okay, I'm going to round it off to 250,000 miles away, roughly 250,000 miles away.
Sorry, I thought you wanted diameter.
Oh,
I just rattled off the diameter.
oh, she rattled off the diameter. See, and was I listening? No, I thought I heard what I was listening for, not what Rima said. Bad,
I
bad.
heard what you were listening
Bad,
for.
bad. Okay, we're going to round off about 2,000 miles. Yes, so about a quarter of the size of the Earth. Who had the color of the sky? Anybody? Some people are missing today. Anybody want to guess? I hear somebody talking, but it's not clear.
I'll guess.
Okay,
I think the color of the sky is blue.
no.
That was Jerry's question. and
Okay,
he says-
Jerry. What
He
did he-
says black.
Yes, it is black. Do you know why, Jerry?
Jerry's not here.
Mary
So
Lou, do you know why? You've lived with Jerry a long time. Maybe you can read his mind even when he's not there.
I don't know, all the pictures I've ever seen of the moon have, you have a picture like you had the picture
Yeah.
of Earth, that background's always black.
Yep.
Because
Okay.
there's no atmosphere.
Want to speak up so they can hear?
Oh, because there's no atmosphere.
Can you all hear Melanie? There was no atmosphere.
Yeah, that
If
was,
there's no atmosphere, there's nothing to bounce the light around. And so
yeah,
it's black, 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 really black.
okay.
All righty. Who had how long a day?
Well,
I think
I
I
had
made a
the
mistake.
next one, which was the sound of the wind.
All righty.
And I said, there is no sound because there is no wind because there's no atmosphere.
Very good. Which is why it was so amazing. Remember a couple of weeks ago when we heard the wind
Mhm.
on Mars? Because Mars doesn't have much of an atmosphere, very thin, but there's enough there to create a wind sound. All righty. I think I'll skip that one for a minute. Jordan, your turn. Why are all the names Russian on the back side?
Okay, the answer I got for this was that they were the first ones to take pictures of the backside of the moon on October 7th, 1959,
Right.
with the Luna 3 probe that they
All righty.
sent. And they used the slingshot method to go around the backside of the moon and get pictures. So they
Oh.
named the craters that they saw.
Okay, now, some of you are too young and some of us are old enough to remember, back in the 50s, much to America's amazement, in 58 or 59, blink, 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 and the Russians had set off a rocket with something called Sputnik, a little satellite that went around the Earth. They beat us to it. We were very embarrassed and very annoyed. And it began what became known as the space race with the Russians. And in the end, by, when was it that we landed on the moon?
1969.
Thank you. In 1969, almost 20 years later, we caught up and surpassed the Russians and actually got to the moon first with real people, with real shoes that actually climbed down a ladder and walked on the moon. But for about 10, 15, 20 years, they were ahead of us in that space race. So they got to see the backside of the moon before we did. And like all explorers, they named everything. And obviously it was in Russian. Now, I'm not sure she's here. I gave this to two people, I think. Sandy, were you the one that I asked why we bother studying these moon rocks that we bring back from the moon?
Yes.
Yes. And
Yes. Yeah, well, what I found is that we can learn more about the creation of the universe by studying the moon rocks, because everything on the moon is undisturbed. That's what I
Okay.
read.
All right. On the Earth, Bob, do you happen to know this one? How old is the oldest rock we've found on Earth?
Don't know.
Okay.
But isn't the age of the Earth is, 4.5 to 5 billion years, so it can't be any older than that. And I
No.
think it's coming close to that.
Well, it's around 3.5 billion years old. And the reason is, unlike the moon, which we will go over why the moon is considered a dead object and the Earth is not, the Earth has erosion. The Earth has volcanoes. It has plate tectonics. It's constantly churning over and changing things. So rocks, even though we put them out in the cemetery as gravestones thinking they're going to last forever, or the mountains are symbol of eternity, they're not. They get ground down, washed away, swallowed up. And so only on a few places on Earth do we find rocks as old as 3.5 billion years old. So if you can go to the moon and bring back a few rocks and some dust, those chances are pretty much 4.5, closer to 5 billion years old. So there's that gap from the beginning that we can study. And anybody who's a geologist or a chemist or even a physicist can learn a lot from looking at a rock. It's really quite amazing. Alrighty, what else? Did I forget anybody with a question?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes,
Oh, what?
Say Drew.
Drew and my mom.
No, not
Okay,
me.
Megan, what was your question?
Okay, good job. No, mine was the miles from the Earth to the moon, which is, yeah, what you said, 250,000. And then
Okay.
Drew's was, what is a blue moon?
What was Drew's?
A blue moon. What is a blue moon?
All right. Yes.
So I found out there's technically 2 types of blue moons, but we normally only use one of the definitions.
Mhm.
So one of them is called a seasonal blue moon, which is the 3rd full moon in an astronomical calendar that has 4 full moons. But then the one we commonly refer to is a monthly blue moon, which is a full moon, the 2nd blue moon that happens in a month.
Okay, we're going to skip the astronomical number 1 because that's very unknown or not spoken of in the general public. But when you hear a phrase out there, oh wow, once that happened once in a blue moon, maybe the gorgeous guy asked you out for a date, once in a blue moon. So that's when you have 2 full moons in a month. Now, did you research a little further? How often does that happen, Drew, or don't you know?
Once every 2.5 years, generally.
Very good. Yes. So about once every 2.5 years, that moon cycle catches up with the sun cycle, I guess you could say. And we have 2 full moons in a month. Did you happen to look when the next one's coming up? I didn't think to ask anybody that.
I thought it was August.
Okay, so everybody else can check on their whatever they use and find out, is August 2021 going to have 2 full moons? And the second one then would be a blue moon. Alrighty. Now, once again, sometimes my notes get mixed up. Did I ask everybody to think about the most beautiful moon they've ever seen? Or I did. Okay. Melanie, she's nodding, so we'll start with Melanie. What was your memory?
It's not one particular memory, but I just love, I shared this with you last week, the crescent, right after the new moon, just the tiny sliver of the crescent.
Okay, in the evening.
In the evening.
In the
yes.
evening. All right. Who else had a memory? Nerlin.
Jerry's memory?
Yep.
Okay. One Easter Sunday morning, we had, I don't remember what year it was, but we had sunrise service up on top of Sherman Hill. And it was a full moon was setting in the west while the sun was coming up in the east.
Yes,
And the moon looked really extra big because it
yes.
was right on the horizon. That was awesome.
So
Yeah.
you and Jerry saw that together?
Yes, we did.
Okay. All right, somebody else.
I like the
Sandy?
harvest moon.
Okay, who's this?
This is Bob.
Bob, all right.
I like harvest moons. These nice, big, kind of yellowish moons. Not one in particular, but
In general,
it's in general.
usually September, October, depending when the moon is, around the fall equinox, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Who else before I give mine? Well, I'm sorry, I have to be a hog here because I have three. I don't know why. I never drove down in the evening, but obviously one year, sometime in the last 20, 30 years, driving to Long Island to visit my mother, I hit the George Washington Bridge, can you believe, at sunset. It must have been rush hour. I don't know. It must have been fall, and there was the city in the twilight. And New York City from the George Washington Bridge at twilight can be pretty beautiful. And there behind the city was rising the most incredible big yellow moon. So that was one. Another one was maybe 40 years ago. My husband and I were on a camping trip to New England, and we must have been in Maine along the coast. I forget where. It was a state park in the forest, the spruce forest. And we had gotten there late. We set up our tent, and it was still, the sun was just beginning to go down. We decided there was a path through the spruce woods to the ocean, rocky shore, northern Maine. So we trudged through the darkening forest, and all of a sudden, there we were on the east coast of the US with the Atlantic Ocean in front of us, and rising up out of the water was this big, fat full moon. A surprise, because back in those days, I don't think I kept track of when that was going to happen. And the third one, in a sense, was the most beautiful. I had a radio show on WALF, so it probably was about 25 years ago, maybe, yeah, late in the 80s. And we were having Aurora Borealis for some reason that particular year, coming down as far as New York State. And it was in October because the leaves were down. And it was a crescent moon, I'm guessing 2 or 3 days old. So it was hanging in the bare branches of the trees to the west, northwest. And the aurora was just this glow of pink. So you had this silver sliver of a moon against the pink aurora of the sky, seen through the black skeletal branches of the trees. And those are the three that I, remember the most. So anyway, anybody else? Did I cut anybody off?
No, but I have a second one.
All right.
There you go. When we were first married, we had an upstairs apartment in Bath, and this was about 60 years ago, and it faced towards the east. And it was a winter night. I don't know if it was January or not, but anyway, there was an eclipse of the moon. And it started in the very early evening, and we could see it just sitting in front of our window and see that whole eclipse until it ended.
All right.
And that was kind of special because we were inside, it was warm. We didn't have to go outside and
freeze.
look for it in the winter time. And
was Jerry always dragging you out to see the stars in the cold winter?
not always.
Just sometimes.
Well, when you had a really good clear sky, yes.
Okay, let's move on to a few things that I was going to discuss before we go to next time's questions. I'm old enough to remember reading many decades ago different theories about how the moon was formed. if you study astronomy and the solar system and our various planets and their various moons, if you look at just the big moons, in recent times with more powerful telescopes, we've discovered that planets like Jupiter and Saturn have many, 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 many moons, but a lot of them are teeny tiny. It's like, they almost don't count. But the biggies, some moons are actually bigger than Mercury, and definitely bigger than our moon. In those cases, all those big moons orbit their planet around their equator. Our moon does not do that. Its orbit is tilted at about 5 degrees above and below the equator. And that would tells a scientist that, it didn't form in a normal way. Normal being as that disk of dust and rubble began to coalesce, first the biggest in the middle, which became our sun. And then gradually in the ring around the sun, the various planets gathered up. And then around them, the spinning gas, once again, it's like a spinning record. The moons formed in that same plane. Ours didn't fit that model. So now most astronomers agree that once upon a time, back in the early days, probably close to the beginning of the Earth, there was something the size of Mars, and it ran smack into the Earth. Ba-bum. And everything melted, and then some of the Earth, or its amalgamation, the two of them together, some of it was ejected, and then that was what coalesced into our moon. And I thought of the following example. You can be driving down the highway in a Volkswagen at 5 miles an hour, and if you hit the tree, there's probably not that much damage. But if you're in a Mack truck going 50 miles an hour and hit that tree, that the energy involved in that collision is much greater. So the larger the object, an asteroid, let's say, or a tiny planet in the making, and the speed it's going, is going to create a much larger collision because there's so much energy involved in something like that. A scientist has named this object, I don't know how to pronounce it, Theia. Melanie, how do you think you'd pronounce that? Theia. Thea? Something like that. So, and that happened close to that 4.5 million years ago. And it resulted in our moon moving around the Earth. Think of a record going around the center little post in the middle of the old-fashioned record player, tilted at a 5-degree angle. And I want to go over what we mentioned briefly, but didn't explain, why the moon is dead and why therefore we can bring back rocks and dust that are actually, let's say, 4.5 billion years old, and they really haven't changed that much, if at all. And before we do that, we have to go through the difference between all you younger guys who are closer to your high school physics class, the difference between mass and weight. I'm going to pick on Drew and Jordan, see how much they remember from high school. You guys still there? Rock is grinning. Jordan, Drew?
Yeah.
Okay. What's the mass of an object?
It's your, so I mean, weight is just mass with gravity. So your weight changes per planet, but your mass will always be the same.
Okay. That's, who's that? Is that you, Drew?
Yeah.
That's good. Mass is one of those things that is hard to explain. So I just call it, it's what is, and it stays the same. It doesn't matter where you go in the universe or what you do. It's always there. You know, it's like the weight you can't ever lose. But your weight varies depending on whether you're standing on the moon. I made a joke to somebody last time, you want to lose weight. maybe it was Ann Pipel. Go up to the moon. You don't have to diet. You just weigh a lot less on the moon. And that's because the gravity of the moon is much less than the gravity of the Earth, because the moon is smaller. It's less massive. It has less mass. Alrighty, let me squint here at my notes so I get it right. Since the moon is smaller and has less mass, it doesn't have as much internal pressure as the Earth does. Therefore, it's not as hot. You know, if anybody's ever gone down deep in a mine or a cave, at first it gets cooler, but after a bit, it starts getting hotter and hotter and hotter. And you get to the middle of the Earth and it's so hot, it's all molten. Well, the moon just is not massive enough, big enough to create enough pressure to make the insides that hot. Also, since there's less material in the moon, it's smaller, there's less radioactive decay, which also heats up the inside of the Earth. So that's not there either. So since we have no internal heat to speak of anymore at the moon, and it very quickly lost the little bit it had, there's no volcanoes on the moon. There's no plate tectonics on the moon. It just sits there the way it is, the way it will be forever and ever. Well, not forever and ever, but for a long time. The other thing is, because it's smaller, the gravity is much less. Therefore, if it had some atmosphere in the beginning, it didn't have enough gravity to keep the atmosphere. And so it drifted away. Without an atmosphere, there's no erosion on the surface of the Earth. The wind doesn't blow, et cetera, et cetera. So with these two things combining, we call the moon a dead, it's not a planet, a dead rocky sphere that doesn't basically change. Unless, what changes it? What can change the surface of the moon besides people walking around on it, leaving behind litter?
A collision with something
A
else.
collision with what, Melanie? Nowadays, or in the
Well-
past too? What made all those?
An asteroid.
Okay, asteroids and meteors.
Mhm.
There was a time, let me look at my notes here to see back when. Where was it called? Maybe I have to turn my notes over. Oh, it was called the Age of Impacts. So back in the beginning, roughly from about, I'm going to round it off, 4.5 billion years ago, which was shortly after everything got started, to 3.2 billion years ago, was known as the Age of Impacts. So think of that big cloud of gas and dust and rubble in the beginning, and it was all spinning. Eventually, things began to coalesce, but it took a while. So eventually you had the sun and those planets and some of the moons, but there was still a lot of rubble and junk, space junk floating around.
Mhm.
And so there was a whole time there, almost 1 billion years, when it was not a safe place to be because you were constantly being caroomed by these asteroids and meteors of various sizes, some quite large. Alrighty. So if I don't know if they can see, can you guys see the surface of the moon or not? Or is
No.
that, no? What happens if we show them that? Do we lose them?
Yeah, we lose
All
them.
right.
Do you want to lose it?
Not their voices,
Oh, no,
but
we won't listen.
can you guys see the moon now?
Yes.
Did we lose their voices?
Nope. Mary Lou just said yeah.
Yes, okay. We can basically say it looks like there's two sizes. There's sort of all those craters, especially on the backside. But there's some really whopper, we call them basins or seas, mares, because back in the day with little telescopes and more imagination than facts, people actually thought there was a man in the moon, right? Or a lady in the moon, or they thought they were oceans on the moon's surface. Well, what scientists have figured out, partly from rocks brought back and partly from more knowledge by more amazing methods. Every now and again, a really big asteroid would whack into the moon in the early days, creating a humongous crater. And it was like the Mack truck going 100 miles an hour. It cracked the hardened surface of the moon in the early days, and inside it was still molten rock. Largely basalt, which is a dark rock, and the basalt bubbled up through the cracks, spread out like molasses. You know, you'd break the jar of molasses on the table and it spreads out. And it filled the crater, which sometimes was round, not always. So we haven't had any monstrous asteroids hit the moon as of late.
So that's why it looks dark.
Dark, because it's basalt. Yep. A darker rock. Let me think for a minute. Now the moon, like the Earth, still gets whacked every now and again, but nothing recently has made a monstrous basin. And I believe through various studies with various instruments that I don't think there's any molten rock in the center anymore. You can double check me on that. I'm not absolutely sure, but I think it's all cooled down since the beginning. Okay, let me see. What else did I want to talk about before we go on? Doop-a-doop-a-doop. Alrighty, just a little bit before we go to what we're going to be talking about next time in questions. You can think about this. You sort of know it, but maybe you never really thought about it as such. Every night, the moon, let's start with the full moon because that's the easiest because that happens at sunset. The moon will rise in the east. And during the night, it moves over towards the west. And then at dawn, it'll be somewhere, you know, if it's a full moon, setting in the west, right? But if you keep track of the moon compared to the stars behind it, it shifts, the moon does, from the west to the east against the background of stars. That means each night, after a full moon, we're going to start there, it'll rise about 50 minutes later. So if the moon rose at 8:30, in 2 weeks' time, we're having a full moon, and the sun's going down around 8:30, I think, then the moon will be rising at 8:30. The next night, it'll be 50 minutes later. So 9:20. 9:20 and et cetera, et cetera. So each night, 50 minutes later, and you go through the whole month, rounded off to 30 days, and you're back where you started from. But each night, then the moon will be against different background stars at different times of the night. Okay. One sort of an aside here, can't totally just talk about the moon. It is a Star Watch Zoom. I want you to look for 3 stars if it ever clears up.
Yeah.
Okay, if you go out at 9 o'clock at night and look to the south. No, okay, stand looking to the south. Then turn to your right, which is to the west. And at 9 o'clock at night, it'll be dark. And the brightest star over near the western horizon will be Regulus, part of Leo the Lion.
I'm going to show them.
Yeah, okay, why don't we
Star
get the map? The map. We can do it with the map. They don't need their mind's eye. They can look at the map. She's finding the map of the month. Aha, okay, raise it up a little. Raise the whole circle up. Okay, now we want to enlarge this part. This part right there. Or, okay, a little bit, one more. Okay, here to the west is Regulus. You want to use your pointer?
Yep.
Okay, there towards the west, pretty much straight west, the brightest star will be Regulus. Squint, squint, squint. Where's Spica? Back up. Over here, where's Spica? Let's scoot this over. Do you see Spica? I'm squinting without my glasses.
I do not see.
Oh, here it is.
Oh, right
Sorry,
here.
sorry.
Yep, right in the middle.
Oh, I see what's happened here. Okay, right, pretty much in the middle, straight south at around 9 o'clock. In a relatively dark part of the sky, so it won't be hard to miss, is Spica. Did you point that out? Yeah, there we go. Then, that's interesting. Okay. Above Spica, almost straight over your head, so you have to be able to look straight up or lie down on the ground, is just about the second brightest star in the Northern Hemisphere, I think, Arcturus. You want to circle that? Okay, so those are three relatively bright stars. Arcturus is going to be the right one near the zenith. Spica is fairly bright in the middle of nowhere. And Regulus is part of that asterism, the sickle or the backwards question mark, part of Leo, and that's getting ready to set. Don't confuse it with Procyon, which is right on the horizon, which is brighter. So those are three stars you can find if it ever gets clear. And by the way, here's a question for, okay, questions. Here's a question for everybody. Got your paper for next time? Let me see where my questions. Ta-da, ta-da, ta-da. Gonna be. It went right in one side of my mind on the screen and right out the other with Procyon. I'll get back to it in a minute. Alrighty, here's our questions. Jordan, you're the historian. You there?
Yeah.
Okay. What did the moon have to do with getting that boat out of the Suez Canal?
Okay.
Alrighty. Number 2, Mary Lou. Where would we look and when would we look for the crescent moon, the new crescent moon? Oh, I remember now what I was going to ask. Okay, everybody listening, here's the question for everybody. Tomorrow night is the new moon, the end of Ramadan, I believe. Where is it? Go find it. Can you see it? If not, why not?
Well,
So,
I'm gonna guess that it's gonna be too cloudy. That's why we can't see it.
ah, all right. But the West Coast hardly ever is cloudy,
okay,
so
okay.
they'll probably be able
They
to see
can't
it.
get out of this one.
Okay.
You're not gonna see the moon tomorrow night.
Pardon?
You're not gonna see the moon tomorrow night.
Well, think about it. Don't give the answer away now. Okay. But you're not going to see the new moon. Why? But in a day or 2 or 3, you'll see the crescent moon. Where
Yeah.
is it, Mary Lou? And
Okay, I got that.
okay. Jerry has a fairly easy one. We're going to stick Jerry with a hard one pretty soon here. Where and when do you see where do you see the full moon and when do you see it, Jerry? At what time of day or night? Okay, Brock, you ready?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay, this is a hard one. Ready?
Okay. Yep.
What makes the moon shine?
Ooh,
Ooh,
okay, thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
you're welcome. All righty. Debbie's not here today. Megan, you want this one?
Yes.
What is Earth shine?
Ooh, okay, thank you.
And at what phase of the moon do we see the Earth shine and what
Okay.
causes it?
Okay.
Okay, Bob, you still there? You and Ann?
Yes, we're still here.
All righty. And you might have to help Bob with this one. This is a toughie. What is the Saros cycle? S-A-R-O-S.
Okay.
Okay, Sandy, still there?
Yes.
All righty. Think in terms of seasons. Spring, summer, fall, winter. When is the moon highest in the sky and when is it the lowest?
Depending on where you are.
Okay, Drew, do you want one?
Yes.
Alrighty. What is the next date that the moon will occult, OCCULT, Aldebaran, ALDEBRAN, I think, which is a star in Taurus the Bull. So once in a while, the moon occults, covers up stars, Aldebaran being one of them. When's the next time that's going to happen?
All right. Thank you.
Alrighty, now let's see. Who did I forget? No, somebody there that I didn't ask anything yet?
You forgot me, Mary Lou.
Who's that?
Rima.
Rima. Okay, I gave your question to Drew. Let me see if I can find another one. Doo-ba-doo-ba-doo-ba-doo. Okay, we're having an eclipse of the moon in 2 weeks and a day, Rima.
Okay.
Are we going to be able to see it?
Okay.
Is Jordan and crew going to be able to see it if they get up early in the morning?
Okay.
Okay. Now, do we have time, Brock? I was going to assign you a very interesting project if you want to take it on.
Sure.
All right, Megan, Drew,
Yes.
Jordan, you might all want to help them with this.
Okay.
Listen first, and then you can write down the directions. First of all, Megan, is your apartment first, second floor?
Second floor.
Okay. Do you have a view to the east or not? Sunrise.
Well, no, that's, yes.
You can see the sunrise from one of your windows.
Yes.
All righty. All year long, or I mean, it's different in the summer than the winter, but are you enough facing east that you can get that shift?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Here's what Brock has to do, because I know he will live long enough for a year to do it. Who knows about the rest of us? But I want you now, Brock, you can do this 2 ways. You can take a picture of the moon rising once a month when it's a full moon out a window. And you can draw a picture of what you see out that window.
Ooh.
We're going to call this your view of the horizon or the skyscape. In other words, when you look out a window and Brock, you have to sit in a chair right in the middle of the window, the same spot every month, because what you see will vary if you move the chair to the right or to the left. So to be a scientist, you have to have the chair right in the middle and look straight out your window. And then I want you to draw what you see. Is it maybe there's a church steeple? Maybe there's a hill with a big tree on top of it, or a water tower, or maybe part of the airport and a light tower. Whatever that skyline is, you do, and all of you in the apartment can help them with this, whoever's the best artist. Do a sketch of that on a piece of paper and then take a picture of it. And then what you have to do, Brock, is you're going to be the astronomer once a month for about a half hour as the sun goes down and the full moon is coming up. So you have to go either to your local paper to find out when the full moon is, or to some app on the computer. When is the full moon? I think it's the 26th of May, but you can check. I think it's going to be in 2 weeks and a day. So that evening, and why I'm giving it to you guys is because unlike us with cloudy weather, except for maybe fog or smog, you tend to have clear skies. And also you'll be looking east away from the ocean towards the mountains and the desert. So maybe it won't be that foggy. So let's hope. And then once a month on the full moon evening, whatever that time is, you have to get to your chair with your camera and your pencil and paper, the one paper, because you're going to use just this one picture out your window. And you draw a circle of the moon when you see it coming up. Is it coming up right over your neighbor's chimney, or the water tower, or the steeple, or whatever it is? And that's the month of May. And then you don't have to do anything for another whole month till the next new moon, full moon. Same thing, chair in the same spot, look out the window to the east at sunset. You can write down the time too. That's probably good, 8:30, whatever it is. And as soon as you see the moon come up, wait till it's all fat and full, sitting there on the horizon, draw a circle of where it is. And I'll give you a hint. It's not going to be in the same spot. So as the year goes by and it shifts every month, you're going to record the shift and what happens over 12 months. Okay. And then you can, yes? What?
Challenge accepted.
I'm sorry, what?
He said challenge accepted.
Challenge accepted.
All right. Now, if you think this is, after say 4 months, you're thinking, good grief, this is boring. God, I got a half hour every month to do this. Better not forget. Think about those famous astronomers from 400 or 500 years ago. That guy with the funny name, Copernicus. And then 100 years later or so, Kepler. All those men, and Galileo, night after night after night after night, year after year after year, they would go and they would look and they would look and they would write down what they saw. And then during the day, their poor wives, it was worse than having football on television. They would sit and do the math, calculate. But you know, after a lifetime of doing that and building on the records of others before them, those men changed the way we see the world. All of a sudden, the ideas that ruled for thousands of years, whether it was Aristotle, the Greek philosopher, or the church during medieval times, all of a sudden they threw a monkey wrench into the whole works and said, you know what, guys? What we thought isn't true. We didn't have facts on which to base our opinions. And so whereas for a long time, people thought the earth was the center, right? And everything obviously went around and around, and we were in the middle and we were the most important. And starting with Copernicus, well, the Greeks kind of knew it thousands of years ago, but we forgot what they knew. So in more modern times, it was Copernicus, I think in the 1400s, give or take 100 years. He began to shake his head and said, you know what? This just is not working. I have all these observations that I've made night after night after night, and I've done the math. And you know what? We're not in the middle. The sun is in the middle. Yeah. And so from there, a whole bunch of stuff began to fall apart. And we began to rebuild our knowledge of the world that we live in. And Brock, it's all because people like you for a whole year, 12 times, you know, a few hours at the beginning to get your maps, maybe get your first picture. You're going to keep the records for a whole year. And then you're going to tell us what that moon did. Once a month at a full moon, where it rose compared to where you were sitting. What do you think?
Okay.
Okay, Megan, Jordan, Drew, did you catch all that so you can help them out with it?
Yeah.
Okay. So that's a long haul assignment for one of our youngest members. And you know, Brock, what grade are you in? Third, fourth?
Third.
I'm sorry, what?
Third grade.
Okay. I would go to your science teacher or your teacher and explain what you're doing, that this is going to be a whole year project that you've taken on as part of this astronomy Zoom class you're attending every 2 weeks. and that you would like to present it to your class probably next year when you're in 4th grade. Your results. You don't have to wait a whole year. Maybe you could do it after 6 months because the moon will have moved in 6 months, and you can tell your class about it and maybe get some extra credit. How's that sound?
Okay.
Okay. All righty, let me see. Full moon, doot, doot, doot. All right, I want everybody to see if they can find the new moon tomorrow night, clouds permitting. And then in the next couple of nights, especially on the 13th, 14th, and 15th, I think that's a few days from now. If it's clear here, you guys on the West Coast can do it too. Let's look for earth shine and see if we can spot it. All righty, any last questions before we wrap this up? Yes, Mary
I've
Lou.
been looking for the May star chart and I can't find it on the website.
All right, we've been
Could
having
Melanie
trouble
post it?
with that. Melanie?
It's on the event calendar.
Well, I've looked there and I have Star Talk with Mary Lou, but I don't have anything recent.
Did you have the one for today?
And then no, I could not find that one for today. I just signed in.
So it does this weird thing where the event that's happening today goes under previous events. We do have printed ones here at the library too, if you want to stop by and grab one.
Well, and then I tried searching for it and I was told I couldn't, it wasn't there. So
Could you just run through, Melanie, because the West Coast might want this too, how
Yeah,
they find it?
I can show you how to do it from my computer too, while I'm sharing the screen.
okay.
All right, so everybody that's on computer, watch so you can see how to find whatever it is you're trying to find.
Yeah, so our events calendar unfortunately does this silly
First
thing.
start at the beginning. Where do they go? Webpage?
Yep.
Because some people, they need to go know from the beginning.
So you go to our website, alfredboxofbookslibrary.org. And if you go to the events tab, it'll show that there are no events happening today.
Yeah.
Because it does that silly thing. If you go to previous events though, and scroll down so you can hit next events, because the last one here was April
Yeah.
27th. Go to next events down here.
Okay. Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, I'm trying to get STLS to fix this because I don't like this. But so today's event is right here.
Yeah.
Jordan, did you follow all of that up on the West Coast?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And if you click on today's event,
Oh. Okay.
the photos, and then the link for the star chart is right there.
Okay.
Where's the link for the star chart? Right there. Okay,
Yep.
and so press that. Let's see what happens. Ah,
Yeah.
okay. Did you catch all that, Mary Lou?
Yes, I did. Thank you. That helps a lot.
You're welcome. Yeah,
'Cause
it's,
I couldn't find today, so.
yeah,
It's like driving on the
It's-
back roads of PA, the dirt
I
roads, and they
guess
don't have
so.
signs.
it's so frustrating. Yeah, that whatever day it is, it goes to the previous
Yeah,
day's
to the
events.
previous, and then you have to click on that.
Yes. So I'm trying to fix it.
But
I'm
once you
sorry about
know
that.
the steps, you can, find
Yeah.
it. Okay.
Any other questions? Our next one will be
Oh, in 2 weeks,
in 2 weeks.
is it
which
the
is-
25th? 25th of May,
Yes,
same
the
time.
25th.
And basically, I was going to talk about 2 things, how the moon affects us on the earth. I mean, we don't have tourism yet, bed and breakfast on the moon, although Brock may have lived long enough to see that. I was going to talk about the phases of the moon, which were those assignments, and the tides, but I'm afraid it's too much. And then the following 2 weeks, I was going to talk about eclipses. So maybe the tides will get shoved into the eclipse one. So it's 3 altogether on the moon. Wound up, there was just
Okay.
a lot to talk about.
Yeah.
So, okay.
All right. We will see you in 2 weeks. Thank you so much.
Goodbye.
Bye.
Yeah.
Bye.
Thank you.
Enjoy your sunshine.
Have a good day.
Thank
Yep.
you. Let's stop.